In the world of political maneuvering, sometimes the stakes aren't just high, they're catastrophic. Take Keir Starmer, for example, the man who managed to step into a mess so monumental, it's almost as if he did it on purpose, wearing nothing short of clown shoes. It's almost impossible to fathom how someone with a significant political platform could make decisions so thoroughly misguided. But here we are, and here's Starmer, tripping over his own incompetence, unable to even recognize the magnitude of the storm he's created. But then again, this is Starmer we're talking about. He's the kind of leader who'd rather toss a grenade into the heart of international relations than tread carefully in troubled waters. And that's exactly what he did when, in a bold, though utterly foolish, move, he sent over a battalion of 100 of his supporters to the United States to campaign for Joe Biden's political opposition in key swing states. Now, whether Starmer thought he was making some grand statement of solidarity or whether he was just trying to play it all for some political points, who knows? But one thing's for sure, it was diplomatic disaster in the making. What did Starmer expect would happen? It's almost as if he believed the UK's endorsement of American politics would go unnoticed or be received warmly. Spoiler alert, it wasn't. Instead, it was like throwing gasoline on a fire that was already waiting to explode. Trump, naturally, didn't take too kindly to this unsolicited interference. And when Trump gets angry, well, let's just say that history has shown us he doesn't let things slide. He remembers, and he retaliates, often with a vengeance that's both swift and savage. Starmer's foolishness didn't end there. Oh no, it wasn't enough to just wade into foreign politics without a care in the world. No, he had to go one step further and leave the diplomatic relations in ruins when the UK's Foreign Secretary, David Lammy, decided to play verbal tennis with Trump, calling him a neo-Nazi sympathizing sociopath. Now, anyone with even an ounce of political sense would know that this was a spark waiting to ignite a full-scale inferno. But did Starmer step in to clean up the mess? Did he offer any kind of apology or make an attempt to mitigate the damage? Not a word, not even a token gesture to step back from the flames. And just like that, Trump's resentment bubbled over, and like a volcano waiting to erupt, it spewed out a wave of economic retaliation. The UK, which already had enough problems on its plate, suddenly found itself staring down the barrel of Trump's economic sledgehammer. A tariff, a monumental import tax, and the promise of job losses came crashing down, bringing the entire economy to the brink. Was Starmer prepared? Of course not. This wasn't some strategic political misstep. This was a full-blown catastrophe that he failed to see coming. Starmer had already shown he was out of his depth, but now, the real consequences of his actions were unfolding in real time. The UK's relationship with the United States, that cherished, special relationship that so many like to talk about, was disintegrating right before their eyes. What should have been a moment of delicate diplomacy was now turning into a full-scale disaster. In the process, Starmer's failures didn't just affect him, they were pulling the entire country down with him. He had become the architect of the UK's economic downfall, and the walls were starting to close in. Let's be clear, the economic chaos that was unleashed wasn't just a minor hiccup. No, it was a train wreck, a catastrophe of epic proportions. The economy, once precariously hanging by a thread, now faced an assault so fierce that even the weather forecast in the UK seemed calm in comparison. Economists, who are usually quick to spin the numbers in a way that comforts the public, were left scrambling to try and make sense of the damage. But nothing could cushion the blow. The UK's future growth forecasts were decimated in the blink of an eye. What was once expected to be a modest 1.2% growth was now slashed down to a pitiful 0.4%. But it doesn't stop there. British manufacturing, the backbone of its export economy, was already starting to buckle. Iconic companies like Rolls-Royce and BAE Systems, which had long been the pride of the nation, were staring at their profit margins shrinking faster than a posh cucumber sandwich. Meanwhile, British farmers, always at the mercy of unpredictable economic forces, were about to face a nightmare scenario. With trade deals in jeopardy and prices soaring, the loss of key international contracts could very well lead to the collapse of rural communities that depend on exports for their survival. It's not just about the numbers, though. This is about people. People's livelihoods were at stake, and the ripple effects would be felt far beyond just the elite circles of politics and finance. When the cost of basic goods starts climbing, it doesn't just affect the CEOs sitting comfortably in their office chairs. It hits the working-class families who are already struggling to make ends meet. Prices on everything from food to gas to home goods were about to go through the roof, and the average Brit, already weary from the weight of inflation, would now have to contend with the reality that their wages wouldn't keep pace with the ever-growing cost of living. And the most frustrating part, this wasn't just some random economic stumble, it was the direct result of Starmer's catastrophic political decisions. Every move he made seemed designed to push the UK closer to disaster. He'd rather dally with the whims of political correctness and ideological purity than focus on what really matters: stability. What he failed to understand was that international relations aren't a game, and when you step on the wrong toes, there are consequences. The world doesn't forgive mistakes like these, especially when they come from a leader too stubborn to admit fault. What followed was a relentless cascade of bad news. As the cost of goods and services climbed higher, small businesses, already struggling, began to crumble under the pressure. Over the past month alone, more than 1,600 UK company directors filed to wind down their operations. In a move of desperation, some businesses, like the cabling company Kinetic, were already moving their production overseas to avoid the crippling costs. India was looking like a much more attractive option for companies trying to survive in this new, hostile economic environment. Who could blame them? The UK was quickly becoming an economic war zone, and anyone with the resources to escape was doing so. Behind every failed business, behind every cut job, are real people, families and communities who are about to be crushed under the weight of Starmer's incompetence. From Sheffield to Swansea, towns are bracing for waves of unemployment that could tear apart the fabric of the UK's economy. And Starmer? Well, he's still scrambling, trying to salvage whatever scraps of dignity are left in his political career. The reality, however, is undeniable. His leadership is unraveling, and the more he tries to patch things up, the more the fabric of his credibility disintegrates. The last-ditch efforts from Starmer's camp to get diplomatic sweet-talk rolling are laughable. The Foreign Secretary, David Lammy, was sent scrambling to draft plans to make amends. But let's face it, the damage is done. It's too little, too late. And if that wasn't enough, even Starmer's own party was beginning to lose faith in him. Shadow Chancellor Rachel Reeves, normally a staunch supporter, started openly criticizing him, suggesting that his string of diplomatic disasters had left the UK vulnerable. And then, of course, there's Jeremy Corbyn, always eager to twist the knife. With a public statement aimed squarely at Starmer's handling of international relations, Corbyn couldn't resist calling it a masterclass in how to isolate your allies. If that doesn't tell you all you need to know about the crumbling state of Starmer's leadership, I don't know what will. His own party is now openly calling out his catastrophic missteps, and the general public is left to pick up the pieces. The clock is ticking, and Starmer's credibility is slipping through his fingers like sand. How much longer before the UK is entirely lost to the fallout of his disastrous decisions? It's hard to say, but what's certain is that Starmer's legacy will be one of failure, one that will haunt the UK for years to come. And the worst part, he has no one to blame but himself.